It's now 6:30. We will start the planning board meeting for September 3rd. So I'll call the meeting to order. And first item on the agenda is public comment. This would be any comment that regards any item that is not on the agenda, which you all should have seen. I hope everybody is signed in. I continue to do that as you come in. The next item, we have to I'll ask Larry to join us tonight, fill in for Brian. So are you good?
I'm good.
All right. So note that. Is there any public comment at all? All right. And well, I can move the microphone. How's that? No, that's not going to make any difference. Oh, good. Okay.
Public comment about this.
Anything that is not on the agenda tonight.
Okay. So the Mighty Joe Campground is on the agenda.
That is on the
And
agenda.
it'll be
So
open to us to talk after.
yeah, well, public comment for that agenda item will be during that agenda item.
Thank you.
Okay. But this is an opportunity for public comment on other items that are of interest to the public. All right, then I will close public comment. And we move to the capital improvement program. We should have some project submittals, some discussion from the school board. I'm not seeing any school board. School board.
Right there.
You're it?
You have them all. What do you want me to say about them? They're good. I love them. We might have a couple more that we would like to add. Paving the NES in front of the kindergarten and doing a culvert, replacing the culvert. And then we're gonna have, the culvert is pretty much all destroyed underneath, so what's happening is the water is not going through the culvert. It's running down into the parking lot, and it's ruining the concrete of the tar. So it's really a disaster. And then the Damon House is lead-based paint on the outside, and it's really all peeling and chipping. So that might be another one that we would like to add. So is there a deadline for when we need to add them all?
We are putting together the plan for this year, the
Yep.
budget year,
Right,
which has to go to the selectmen this year, calendar year, for warrant articles which have to be done by
right.
December.
Okay, so,
So
Brian, I saw you
we
moving ahead. What, do you have a date?
We extended it. The Board of Selectmen
Yeah, I know you
gave an
extended
extension to, do you remember the date off the top of your head,
The
Bruce?
question was, when do the submittals have to be met? Right. The answer to that question was sometime in June.
Right.
right.
But you have other submissions from the school board that they'd like to put added to the capital improvement program this year. There should be like 5 of them.
What were they, Brian?
You?
What were they?
One was the design the air handler replacement at the elementary school. And that is, that's just for the cost to design and engineer it. One was to install, I'm getting these backwards now, sorry. Install new fire alarm systems that meet life safety code requirements in both schools. One is to replace the failed air handler at the elementary school, and that's to do the actual replacement work. That was $161,000. The next one is the second floor elementary air handler duct work. So So there's two floors of doing, replacing air handling ductwork. It works with the previously installed air handler. That's $27,700 in 2023. And then the final one is to, sorry, not the final one. Buy a pickup truck in 2021 with a snowplow. For $40,000. Then the final one for the school district is purchase a one-ton dump truck with sander and plow in 2026 for $50,000. So I think that's 6.
Right, those are the ones that I know have been submitted.
Yes.
But the ones that I was just talking about are just additional ones that if we can, we would like to submit them. If not, then just say so, we'll do it for next year.
If you can get them in, we could probably add them, but it is up to the planning board.
Okay, well, give us a drop dead date and
Well, I think if we are going to accept them, we need them by the next meeting, for sure, because we're coming right up on our deadline to get this
Right.
whole
When's your
work
next-
done into the selectmen.
2 weeks from tonight, so.
for tonight?
Yeah, should be the 17th
Okay,
without a calendar.
17th?
all right, I will make sure that we get them in. Thank you.
So can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is there a particular, I see you got all these submittals here, and they range from, what, 50,000, 25,000, 150,000, 161,000. And if I'm looking at this right, you're asking for that in 1 year? Am I reading this correctly?
No, and you know what, it's not on here, but I know that what I had seen, all right,
So they're for different years, but,
yes.
so 2020 you
21,000,
get,
2022, yep. And 23, right.
You need to identify that year that was needed for.
Sorry, did not what?
right, so you're not planning on putting any money, saving up to that year, you're just trying to get, you want to get all the money that, in that year. So like for this project's 150,000, you want 150,000 in 2021.
What we would like to do is if we get them on a warrant article, and then a little bit, so that by the time that year comes, we have the money. So it's not, yeah, we want $6 billion right now. And
So
some
is
of
there
the actual installation, Ryan, we can't use any kind of grant money for designs, but I know that we are looking at the state for some, and the federal grant for some of the actual installations. So until, we know that they will give it to us, but the design we definitely need. Does that make sense? And they have to be
Somewhat,
designed.
so I guess,
Okay, they have to be designed first.
I get that part.
Okay.
But for the dollar values, is the school board gonna put together, like a plan for,
I thought they
what year?
already had and had
because I don't
submitted
see it
it.
here, right?
Because I know I saw something that was all written out.
They're not putting any funds away incrementally through the years to get to the total. There are 5 or 6 projects here, one starting in 2020, there's 2 in 2021, there's 1 in 2022, 1 in 2023, 1 in 2026, I think. And so they're asking for the whole amount each year from the tax levy by warrant.
So that's how these forms are filled out, and I guess that's my question to the school board. Is that what you're intending? Because that's what's presented to us right now.
Okay,
Maybe you can't answer that tonight, but
my understanding is that when this is all presented, and I was not at that meeting, that it was suggested to us that we start a trust fund, or whatever you want to call it, so that, maybe 10,000 each year, so that when we get to 2020, we're already there, 2023, the money will already be there, and just keep, every year a small amount, rather than all of a sudden 1 year we need $7 million and it's not there. So that was my understanding, that whoever Doug and Bob Adams met with, they had worked out a plan. So I'm surprised at the confusion here.
Larry?
Bruce, you can, if you would be, just correct me as I go along. Having been at several of the school board meetings and many of the CIP meetings, it is my personal observation that the school district, school board, is very much still learning the vocabulary that the planning board, as the CIP committee, has been working with for several years. And what they're looking for is a tie-in and a renaming and a rethinking of what has been their individual warrant process in past years. So, to use just fake numbers, in 5 years, they would like to have, say, $500,000 in warrants to go for the projects that you just heard. Break that down in 5 years as a savings account, special reserve funds, $100,000, 5 projects, $20,000 a year. At the end of 5 years, you will have your $500,000 at no pain to the tax load, and each of the 5 projects will be fully funded. And the paperwork, the justifications, and the detailed work that the CIP committee does for that is still up in the air, because it's still, from my personal view, still a new process. An unkind person would be using the phrase kicking and screaming, but I wouldn't do that.
Thank you, Larry. For not kicking and screaming.
Anything else?
So, well, do we need for the school board to come back to us with incremental listings on each of these?
And then we would have to prioritize.
Right.
So, well, there may be a programmed requirement in 2020. If there's not enough money for it in 2020, it might fall to a lower priority for 2021. As an example, just
I certainly have been through the town CIP and that process, but this is the first year that we've come on board. So to speak, I know, don't look at me like that. So it's a learning experience for us, and we need the planning board's help. So
So for
Okay.
each one of these in the out years,
Yes.
starting in what, 21 and 22, whatever, you need to come in and incrementally say how much you need for each one of these over the years, okay?
Yep.
And can we have that by the next meeting?
By your next meeting or the selectmen's meeting?
By our
Our next meeting.
When's your next meeting?
17th.
The 17th.
Okay,
we will likely be downstairs on the 17th, but
okay,
it will be the 17th.
okay.
Anything more for the school board?
Do you need someone to work with you from the planning board or something
That would
like
be
that?
lovely.
Can we have someone work with them, volunteer to work with Larry?
Larry, you want to work with us?
Bruce
You
has-
know us all very well.
Bruce typically has worked with
Yeah.
And I
all
thought
the
that Bruce,
Yeah.
you had worked
other
with them.
department heads or whatever on their submittal.
Okay. You want to then?
You'll let us do it.
Let's make a decision.
Yeah, these
This is
numbers.
my spot. in doing all the background work on this. And now that you let me talk, I'm telling you, I met with the school superintendent and the business agent, and these submission sheets that are before you are how they propose to fund these projects in the years that they have. They don't propose to do any incremental funding. So I think that it's,
So
I can reach
you're-
back out to them again.
you're saying they are assuming successful warrants for each of these amounts in each of these
They're
individual
proposing that
years?
That's how they get the money. They do have to ask the voters. That's all. It's just that they're gonna ask for 150,000 in one year, 161,000 in the next year, 25,000 next year in 2020. That's, I suggested strongly to them that they use incremental funding, and they told me that they had decided not to.
Brian, that is not the message that I got from,
It's not Brian,
I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
but that's all right. I'm only
B-boy.
saying what they told me. When
Okay,
they handed me these sheets and we talked them over.
okay.
That's what they told me.
And you met with Earl and
School
with Nate,
superintendent.
not with Doug and, okay.
No, Doug was there,
okay,
the school superintendent was there, and the
okay,
business agent Nathan was there,
okay,
but not Bob Adams.
okay, all right. That's,
So-
all right, understood. That's
so-
all right. I will,
So we need additional submissions, if there are additional submissions,
right,
and,
and a plan.
yeah.
Okay. And Larry, you will work with us, Mr. Brown?
I have Bruce's telephone number engraved on the inside of my left eyelid.
Okay, who's in the right one? Thank you, Larry. Do you want these back, Larry?
They'll be,
Okay, Thank you.
I mean, they really need to look at doing incrementals. They really do. Whether they choose not to in the long run is only going to, I think, hurt them in the long run. It's not fair to the taxpayers. It really isn't.
So that's why I'm very confused with all of that coming up tonight, because what the report back that we got as a school board was, the recommendation was to put out a warrant article, incremental, so much each year, so that by the time we needed the money, we would have the money. And now all of a sudden, I'm hearing that, nope, we want, $250,000 in 1 year, which I totally agree, we would never get, so. So I'm not sure where the disconnect is, I guess. So
Well,
I'm
you
glad
have
that I
2
came.
weeks to find out.
Yep, I will be more than happy to find out and report back on the 17th. Thank you.
Is there any objection to moving on to the next agenda item?
None at all.
Oh, you got one from Betsy Baker.
A new one from the library?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't notice that it was filled out.
Yeah. It's because it was typed.
Yeah.
Theory.
Oh, I think we've already seen this, haven't we?
We were warned that this was coming to
Yeah.
maintain the historical nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember talking about the copper.
Bottom.
You seen this one? What's a different one?
This is just the procedure process of going through.
So just so everybody knows what we're talking about right
Oh,
now is,
okay.
is
Well,
the submittal
if she's not here, though.
for the library roof. They're asking for 25,000 in 2020, 25,000 in 2021. This is to continue with the restoration of the library in Milton Mills.
All right, well, she will have to come in. Probably, we should invite her at the next meeting. The next meeting.
I just wanted to ask, could we put those chairs out for the people staying in the hallway? Would that be possible? I feel bad that there's a lot of people that can't be part of this. There's chairs in the corner over here.
Okay.
Tom, this is real time, right? The recording is real time? Can they look at a computer and watch it from out there at the same time?
How many are out there?
15.
That's not bad.
Yeah, that's quite a few people.
Yeah.
Set them up in front of a computer?
It should be. That's all I got.
What's that? They want 75 grand next year for the tax levy. 115 next year. Another 160 after that. 2017 after that.
Why are we downstairs that time?
Tax levy.
Because the budget committee always bumps us.
No, they changed it.
They did?
Yeah, we're up here all the time.
All right. We should have been.
We did that
That's our
about a
scheduled
month
meeting.
ago or so.
This is our schedule. I don't know what that does to extension cords.
I gotta get a lot of polls.
Oh, look, that's going for same year as...
And you can't block an aisle. It's completely blocked here. Thank you. Yeah, just bring it out here in front. Just bring it out here in front. Yeah, just make another row. Right at the end of the table there.
So you guys go too? Wait.
Yeah, up there.
Larry,
Come on, you guys.
yeah.
Come on, don't be shy.
Just check.
Come on, right here. Yeah, come on. Yeah, right there. Don't block that door. Don't block the door. There's more over here.
Matt, you're sitting in front of the door, please.
Yeah, you can't.
Give and take. That's from the old, that's the old, mentality. Just tools you want to get with you.
But like I said, watch the cords.
It's a damn big expensive.
Thank you.
It's just right here.
I know. It's like just half the cost of Texas now. I still want to pass my thing if I send it to the private school. Yeah, check the state. There's a state being on like for taxes.
There's a seat back there, you guys.
You know, those 700 fucking years are gonna do it.
And I will propose that we leave the SIP and the Form Ds for next meeting. We skip over that? Is that-
So moved.
There we go.
So, all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, next we'll move on to the continued public hearing for the proposed revised site plan review Addition of accessory uses for the Mighty Joe Campground, Three Ponds Resort LLC, owner SFC Engineering Partnership, Incorporated, applicant 111 Mighty Joe Road, map 28, lot 4. Yep. Ashley, do we have anything on the plan? Fees paid?
Oh, yeah, all of that's,
Okay.
yep.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
You've already
Just a question.
accepted this application, Mr. Chairman. What remains before you open the public hearing is to determine whether or not the board will grant the 2 waivers that are requested. It's at the top of my memo to you tonight.
Dump down at the bottom. I shuffled. Not yet. You got it. Okay. Shall we, you have the comments on the waivers?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I need to address the board, so to be totally transparent with the board and everybody else, most everybody might know I own my own landscape business in Milton. I have done work for Mighty Joe this past year, so I guess I'm asking the board if they would like me to recuse myself from any vote that we may or may not reach. I'm asking the board, not the public, so.
Yeah. I mean, standard, nothing unusual.
As far as work,
You're right.
no. But, I mean, it's the board's decision. I spoke with Mighty Joe prior, like, when I was doing work, told them that I was on the board. May have to recuse myself from any vote, so now I'm asking the board if they want me to recuse myself from this. So,
My own opinion is, you've always been honest in all the different things we've dealt in.
No.
And we've worked with you at every meeting. Not all of you have.
Conflict of interest.
Now, do I need to use the gavel? Okay. The public's opportunity to speak will come once we are at that point. We are not at that point.
I recall last time I went to recuse myself, when you said your statement, but that was pretty relative.
So, what is the sense?
I don't think it's necessary to recuse himself. He just did a job for the people. It's no different than if he did a job for
For the town?
the town.
Joe just asked me to say what I had said before on the subject of recusal. I don't remember it, but the important thing on recusal is that it is the judgment of the person themselves. It is not a directive from either the town's attorney, nor an opposing attorney, nor an attorney either for plaintiff or defendant. And it is not even the opinion of the board itself. It is the opinion of the person themselves who, knowing their situation, what personal, family, financial, or reputational gain they may get from a vote. And I would echo what Lynette has said, that we are fortunate that we have been a thorough and attentive board with varied opinions.
And I guess I should add that at the General Court in Concord, most recusal requests are in fact denied by the court.
By the Hall of Representatives.
But you certainly have that right to request. So I'll put it back to you.
Personally, I don't think it's necessary, only due to the fact that I've had no promises of work if this passes. So I haven't even spoke about work with Mighty Joe about this. If nobody else feels it's necessary, then
You've always been upfront with us.
Okay.
It's necessary.
You want to hear the waiver request first? You want our presentation on the plan?
No, waiver requests.
I'm going to have Dan Flores going to address that with the engineer. Let's go out tonight.
I'm Dan.
Is it just, would you please, in your presentation, specify, my comments read building elevation. Are you speaking topo for the land or of the height of the buildings?
The height and view of the building.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm Dan Flores with SFC Engineering. I'm the engineer for this project. We have requested 2 waivers, the site plan regulations. The first deals with building elevations, and that's found in section 11D5. And the regulation states an accurate rendering or elevation views to scale of what the exterior of the structures will look like shall be submitted as part of the site plan review application. We request to waive that requirement, that if the site plan is approved, those buildings, or that building will be designed and elevations will be submitted as part of the building permit process. So prior to being able to build, we have to submit plans of the building to get the building permit. Shall I read the next one?
Yeah.
The second one is for a lighting plan, and that's from section 15H1A. And it states that all non-residential and multifamily residential site design plans presented to the planning board for approval shall include a lighting plan which provides for a method and level of lighting appropriate for the proposed use or uses as determined by the planning board. All such lighting plans shall, at a minimum, identify location, number, height, type, and intensity of all exterior lighting fixtures to be installed. Proposed exterior lighting fixtures shall provide for a level of illumination appropriate for the proposed use or uses. Illumination patterns proposed shall be such that all sites subject to these regulations will enjoy adequate level of lighting to ensure user safety and security. However, care shall be taken to avoid lighting patterns and intensities which overlight a site, creating nuisance and glare at abutting properties, public streets, and the neighborhood in general. And all lighting plans shall be subject to review by the planning board. No changes or modification in approved lighting plan may be proposed without specific approval by the board. The nearest property line for this project area is over 750 feet away. The exterior lighting will be limited in keeping with the camping experience. And any outdoor lighting that is provided shall be dark sky approved with full cutoff fixtures per the lighting note on the site development plan, note number 22. Thank you.
All right. Your justification for the height waiver. We would expect to see what that building is going to look like, or at least close to what that building is going to look like at this point in the site plan, so we can determine the applicability. But we can, so we'll address the waivers one at a time. Agreed? Okay,
I agree.
so first waiver. What we would ask for is the construction be architecturally consistent, harmonious, and aesthetically pleasing.
Oh, yeah, I don't want to see a skyscraper out there.
Huh? So questions?
Many times the use the phrase the amenities will provide for zip line.
No,
Will
we're just talking about the waiver request right now.
that's exactly what I'm speaking to. Or a climbing tower, both of which are structures, both of which, to have any fun, have to be over 35 feet. A permission for an unreviewed building continues. And if the architecture or height changes, there is less that the planning board can do to review that. I think that's a fair statement.
If I could just make one comment. The justification for this is, again, the location within the property. Where the nearest property line to that building is 850 feet away. It's not visible to the public, it's not visible from the road. There are buildings that are similar to that on the property now, and the intent is to create a similar building. The hope is that with the site plan approval, that allows us to then expend more resources on putting those plans together. That would, again, have to go before the building department for the building permit. So in this case, given the location of the property, it's not visible to the public, it seemed to be an appropriate waiver request.
Without a controlling or suggestion from the board, how will you know that the building is appropriate for its use? And if you do know that it's appropriate for its use, that suggests you have designed it. Have you designed it?
The building, no, we have not designed the building.
Yeah, but you are sure they are appropriate for the use.
It'll be similar to buildings that are on the site now, yes.
Then you could design one similar to what is there. And you could present that design to the board.
Okay.
Anything else? So,
The previous owner of Mighty Joe, didn't they strike a deal with the town at some point to go over buildings that were built without permits?
that's
It's your statement?
not necessarily relevant, but
Well, it's relevant as in those structures. Nothing was presented at the time. So to put something new in place to a building that we never had a preview to view prior would be relevant, I think.
Can I
Would it?
just add one thing on behalf of the applicant?
is that your name and?
I'm sorry, Roy Tilsley, I'm the attorney for for the applicant, Mighty Joe.
Okay.
One of the, you just raised the hypothetical about a zip line or a climbing wall. We're not asking for some kind of, we propose very specific accessory use amenities. They don't include 35-foot high climbing walls or 35-foot high zip lines. We're not asking for a blank check to go out to the site and start creating amenities. We've shown you on the plan exactly what we're proposing, exactly where they're going to be. Albeit, Dan hasn't designed the building yet. Looking at all the people in this room, maybe for obvious reasons. And if we need to do that, we need to do that, that's fine. But, we're not asking you folks for a blank check to just start creating all kinds of things here. We propose very specific things.
Yeah, we understand that. This is the plan we're talking about, no
Correct.
other plan.
Correct.
What we're talking simply, though, is single building
Right.
that we are being asked to approve a waiver for the height.
Understood.
Okay.
And I understand, I think you can understand where we're coming from, given the process that's taken to get here. I can certainly understand the board's concerns with, now you're sitting here and we're at this point and you're wondering what the building looks like. So, there's a reason we've asked for the waiver. We think, again, mostly because we're so far away from any property lines that it really becomes an internal building, internal on the site. Having said that, it's your decision, not mine, so.
How far are you
Okay.
saying from the property line?
Now,
Okay.
we're still
All right,
at the
fine.
board. We have two waivers to consider and vote, and then we move to public comment on the plan as it actually exists. But currently, it doesn't actually exist, because these are waiver requests. So we're going sequentially.
All right.
So,
I'd make a motion
call-
not to accept the first waiver.
all right, so I have a motion to
Second.
deny the waiver one request.
Yes.
Any discussion?
Do we know
I guess
why?
I should say further discussion, but any discussion?
Why?
Why? We have everybody comes through, businesses come through, and they, even though they concepts, they come and see us and ask us our intake on it. Now we're asking, we haven't got there yet. So I don't think it's necessary to grant something that sight unseen. I don't think it's,
I thought that this was to, after discussion and everything else, that you were going to present a design to the board, correct?
I mean, if we get the waiver, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, because this is your baby. If we get the waiver, then when Dan designs the building, he'll present it to the code enforcement people
Right.
for officer for his, that's how,
That's
if
what
we
I
get the
thought.
waiver, that's what would work. So it's not, again, not a blank check to build whatever we want, it's still a process, albeit it wouldn't involve you folks, it would involve code enforcement.
Is that the proper stage?
Code enforcement would verify the construction and that it matches what we have in the plan.
Right.
So the plan, this is the plan.
And if, that it falls within the specified sizes, like 35 feet or whatever,
All right.
right?
Any further discussion?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Larry.
Two things. The city of Dover had a recent experience on new construction in which the facade was going to be presented in blocks of gray and maroon brick red. Yes, it was, and it by some it looked like a failed Mondrian painting. And they thought that the sharp, jarring architectural lines of that building, even though it was 35 feet high and took up only 80% of the space, did not meet what the planning board had thought was coming. Earlier, we had a presentation, and again, new uncharted territory. This happened to be agribusiness for us. And we were very specific in wanting to know the details, site, and use of that building. And that was something that is just, if you don't plan, you don't know if you have one. And I personally, if you pardon the pun, which I always try to work in, sight unseen, S-I-T-E.
I understand what you're saying. You know, the basis of the waiver request really is the fact that these proposed amenities will be located really internally on the site. So this is, you know, assuming that Dan goes back to his office and designs some kind of an avant-garde facility, it's not going to be visible to anybody except for people who come to the campground. Now, why the campground would want to have an avant-garde facility in this area, I don't know. But I think the reason for the waiver request is when, you know, normally we talk about the planning board's role at looking at what is the building going to look like and does it fit within the neighborhood. Now, that has to do with what can we see from the public streets, from the neighbors' houses and things like that. In this case, I mean, these particular structures are not visible to anybody else. So while we certainly can and will comply with the code requirements, the design piece of it doesn't seem to be as important of a function for consideration where it would be if this was in a more publicly visible location.
To keep hammering the same nail, being older, what is now history used to be current events. A Don Amici movie, the title of which says it all. Things change. And I, for long term, have to work on the presumption that the property is divisible, and that what is now not visible might at some point become a visible structure. And if you make sure that structures, if and when they become visible, still represent to closer onlookers, that's just my perspective on it. I thank you for your time.
I understand that, and I don't want to keep hitting the same nail. Obviously, for things to change, you know, they need to be talking subdivisions and things like that, and these are all issues that can come up then. But I understand your point of view. I think you understand ours. You know, it's in your lap, and if you need us to, you know, if we have to get a design to you before you guys can consider this, we'll do that. That's not a big deal.
Mr. Chairman, I think we've beat this issue to
We
death.
have,
We have a motion on the table. I
we
request
have to move the
roll call.
motion. We request to move the motion. All right. All in favor of the motion to deny the waiver, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so, okay. That first waiver is rejected. Okay,
And the vote?
not approved.
And the vote was?
It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 6 to 1. Now the second waiver.
This is your specialty.
Step on the trouble Second waiver is lighting. Shall it?
Thank you for asking. I turned them over.
There are still some chairs over there.
Mr. Chairman, point of order, I am not sitting on the sign-in sheet. They are full, and I don't know if people were afforded the opportunity to sign in, but I am not sitting on them, and there's no sign.
Thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
It says, it'd be on sheet 11 of the site plan set, and I'm looking at,
Sheet 4.
Sheet 4 of 11. 4 of 11.
4 of 11. Oh, I'm sorry, I misread it. As I'm looking at sheet 11, I'm saying, no, there's no lights on this.
No, bottom left,
Right.
page 4.
So on sheet 4, it states that any outdoor lighting that is provided shall be dark sky approved with full cutoff fixtures per the lighting note on the site development plan.
And the
So they're
lighting
saying
notes-
they're going to, all the lighting is gonna be
Will be
dark
dark
sky
approved.
compliant.
So what are you saying, you just don't know exactly where you're gonna put it?
Well, again, I think what we're saying is, usually the yin and yang of lighting is that the developer wants a lot of lights so that people can see, and the abutters in the town want fewer lights, particularly in a rural community like this. Here we have a campground where, part of what we sell is that dark rural atmosphere, so we don't have any interest in lighting this like the mall parking lot. We want to have a dark camping experience. There will be some lights obviously, but I think because our interests are aligned, and again, the fact that we are so far away from any abutting property lines, that, there really isn't any need for a full lighting plan to convince you that we're not going to overlight this area.
So Larry, you want to go first or last?
I would prefer not to, I would prefer not to lead the
Okay.
charge if others can speak.
Well, I'll start.
All right.
I mean, no, 2 of the waiver request states right in there that they're gonna be dark sky approved. And then also the note right on the plan is saying that, all outdoor lighting, the intent of the campground is to have limited artificial outdoor lighting. In keeping with the camping experience, outdoor lighting shall be dark sky approved with full cutoff fixtures. So due to that note right there on the plan, their fixtures have to be compliant to that.
So, it does appear that this is I want to say more reasonable, but it does appear to be a reasonable waiver request. Is that?
I would concur with that.
Okay. I will take the opposite side. The fact that a fixture is dark sky approved says nothing to the height of the fixture. It says nothing to the qualities of the light. It says nothing to the number installed along a pathway. It says nothing about ratcheting the light output. And it, in most, if I remember correctly, please, lighting equipment manufacturers will, just about for free, spec out a lighting plan in expectation of getting the business. That used to be a fair statement. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. And what you're dealing with is the cone of illumination. What you're dealing is with the height of the luminaire. What you're dealing is either a warm yellow or an acid blue barn light. And until those things are defined, there is no lighting plan. And it is a fair statement, and appreciated one, to use dark sky compliant fixtures. The official policy of the state of New Hampshire is to support dark skies. Property values in Leominster are going up exactly for that. Ogden, Utah is becoming the dark sky capital of the United States exactly for that. I get sky bounce from approved lighting coming up from Rochester.
Again, I think the waiver request focuses, primarily on two things. One is the distance to abutting property, so you don't have the usual concern when you have a 40-foot setback as to what the lights are gonna do to the neighborhood. And two, because of the nature of the use that these accessory structures are part of, we have an interest in maintaining a dark sky type of atmosphere. I mean, no campground wants to be lit up. You want people to have that woodsy type of experience. So unlike, most applications when, what the community wants and what the developer wants, there's a tug of war, there really isn't here. That's the basis for the request. Again, if we need to get you a lighting plan, if you want to see it, we can do it. It seemed a little bit unnecessary to us, given those circumstances.
If I may, thank you. A miniature golf course does not work well in shadow. Lights that are 20 feet up, if they're dark sky cut off to 800 feet to 400, split the difference. Dark sky compliant, 20 feet up, 400 feet away is basically horizontal light. And if you go to a gas station, you will find that the gas station exists in a cone of high intensity white light. And that is what I am concerned about happening for the area of the amenities, which will spill beyond. Even I would say to the detriment of someone who is expecting dark sky at their campsite and finds that they can't see the stars and it's already 10 p.m.
Well, these amenities,
exaggerate.
They aren't going to be 24/7 type of amenities, number one. So I'm sure that, what you can tell me if I'm wrong, that the lights will go out at a certain point.
The pool's not even gonna be open at night.
Right.
The golf's not gonna run at night.
But I mean, we hear you again. We share the interest of maintaining the type of camping atmosphere which involves people walking around with flashlights in the dark. If we wanted to have a, Fenway Park type campground with, lights up in the sky, we do it for the whole campground. We've never done that. We don't want to do it. We want to keep the type of atmosphere that you expect to find at a campground.
Okay. Do I,
I'll make a motion to approve the
all right, so,
request to waiver.
so I have a motion to approve the second waiver and a second.
Yep.
Any further discussion?
Yeah.
No repeats, Larry.
No repeat. Oh no, this is not a repeat. Just for the record, full appreciation of the competency of the engineer to make any drawings and presentations that are necessary.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. So, second waiver is approved. Now we have a list. Now, I assume you have this list. We're probably back to design stuff here of some suggested conditions of approval.
Mr. Chairman, there's two ways you can move forward with this, I believe. You do have a waiver that was not approved, which really means that you're sending the applicant back to the drawing board, as it were, to prepare either the building elevations or the renderings of what, I'm not sure which building, but maybe what different views of the accessory uses, the mechanical building and rec hall or whatever it is. You could continue this public hearing to a date specific and find out when they could be done with that, then continue on. Or, and this is at the discretion of the board, or you could continue on, but you wouldn't be able to either deny or approve it tonight. You'd still have to continue the public hearing, and then continue it and review the elevations or the renderings, which is part of the denied waiver request. But it really is up to the board,
Right, I
which way you do it.
understood that. And I wanted to go through the separate conditions of approval so that when a revised plan is brought to us, they will have had the opportunity to include these items, should we decide, in that plan.
I can read those into the record and then
Okay.
give a copy to the applicant if that's what you wish.
I like it.
Okay, so rather than go through that point by point, is that?
Yeah, I
read
think,
it
we're-
into
I
the
mean,
record?
given that we're gonna have to come back one way or the other, I think it makes sense for Dan and Bruce to work together on that and address those as best we can, and, you know,
What I didn't want to do was to incrementally nickel and dime it,
No, I get it,
you
understood,
know,
understood.
back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
So, then, the,
But let me have this read in though.
okay.
Is that okay?
Yes,
All right.
absolutely.
So we read these conditions into the minutes.
Yes. I did want to say that the board does need to know that the TRC, the Technical Review Committee, met quite a long time ago, and they had no concerns or issues with the plan. At the time, the applicant made all the recommended changes that I made. After reviewing the plan at length, and even talking with the president of the TPPA about some of this, and I know we don't agree on everything, I did prepare a list of suggested conditions, and that's should you choose to approve the application later on after the public hearing. And I'm going to read this, and again, this is for the board to digest and consider. It's also for the folks that are here tonight to hear as well. Number one, the campground shall prepare a stormwater management plan, and among other things, shall mandate a recurring maintenance and inspection schedule for all stormwater treatment and infiltration infrastructure. The report shall provide the inspection report forms, and the campground shall inspect on the required schedule and submit said reports to the land use office, specifically for all swales, berms, and bioretention areas on that schedule. 2, the campground shall conduct a quarterly inspection of the campground shoreline and other areas to report on the status of stormwater runoff, retention, treatment, and infiltration infrastructure, and submit an inspection report with photos to the land use office and for the file. If determined that there is undue runoff or runoff in any location, or location is not identified in the stormwater management plan, the campground shall prepare an engineered plan to correct these defects, and after review by the town and the New Hampshire DES, shall repair, remediate, and mitigate said defects. 3, pool or spa discharge of any kind shall not be directed into storm drains or stormwater treatment or infiltration infrastructure. The owner shall obtain a New Hampshire DES discharge permit prior to operation of the pool or pools and spas. Monthly inspection and maintenance reports for the pool water drain infiltration trench and the pool water holding tank pumping event records shall be submitted to the land use office and to New Hampshire DES upon their request. 4, the campground shall take water samples from wells in the campground and or on participating abutting properties and have them tested by a New Hampshire DES accredited lab annually to certify that groundwater aquifers are not being damaged by pool and spa discharge. Lab reports shall be submitted to the land use office annually. If adverse conditions are found, the campground shall dispose of the discharge into a certified disposal facility. 5, the applicant shall agree to submit a dollar amount to the town sufficient to pay for the planning board's consultant engineer for construction, inspection of all stormwater quality infrastructure and pool, spa, water drain infrastructure. If the agreed to amount is not enough, the applicant shall submit additional required funds. If the submitted amount is not expended at project completion, the remaining balance shall be refunded to the applicant. That's it.
That should be all review.
Yeah, obviously.
Okay,
I
just-
don't foresee any issues, but
I'm-
I'll let Dan work his magic. It's good to have a heads up going into it, so.
Good.
Question.
Larry?
Did you and/or Bruce have a discussion as to what a participating abutting property is? What rights and participation they have in the process of item 4?
I would say no, because I just heard those for the first time right now, but I'm sure that we can work it out with staff and what they're concerned about.
All right. So, now we need a motion for a continuous.
Make a motion to continue, and when can you have the,
I would take about a month, so if we took it out to early October, we could come back with the plan. I think we'd prefer to do it all at once and have that rather than do the piecemeal tonight and then come back with that piece, so.
Correct. Our
Okay,
first
so
meeting in October,
first meeting in October?
which we are required to put a date down, and they covered up our calendar over there.
For the Google.
First meeting in October is October 1st. That's the first meeting.
1st of October?
Does that satisfy
Works for me,
you?
Dan. Works for us.
Okay, 1st of October.
Have a motion? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right.
Thank you, folks. We'll see you next month.
Before we, do we want to hear any input from the public on preliminary
We,
as a board?
I'm fine with that. Okay with me. Okay with me.
the plan that we see has to be the plan we are seeing.
Right, I understand that.
Okay, so, I mean, my perspective is that would not be appropriate.
But I think we have a plan here that is pretty much complete except for the building and the building height, right? Which is a concern. There's a footprint here and there's the proposed amenities. Just, there's a lot of people here, so I just wanted to.
There's a lot of people here that
Yes, I have
want
it.
to speak.
Okay,
And you could
All right.
open public hearings, and you can continue it after folks get a chance to testify.
all right, and that's the way we'll do it. We will, we have scheduled a continuance, and
Does it make sense for us to hold off on our presentation until we come back? You can take the public testimony now, and then we'll present the application, or you want me to present it now? I guess that's...
again, there appears to be some confusion about what this actual plan
Sure.
contains, and there is some amount of speculation that is not relevant. So I would guess then it makes more sense for you to present.
Present now.
Yes.
Okay.
And hopefully that will shorten your time.
Yeah, no, we'll be efficient. I mean, obviously, the board's fairly familiar with the plan.
You have to formally open the public hearing.
Okay, then I will formally open now the public hearing.
Again, my name is Roy Tilsley on behalf of Three Ponds Resort LLC in Mighty Hill Campground, map 28, lot 4. Our engineer, as you know, Dan Flores from SFC is here, as well as George White, who's the manager of the campground. As you know, we're here for a site plan review of the redevelopment plan to add additional amenities to the campground. These amenities are going to go within the existing developed footprint of the campground. There is no expansion of the number of campsites proposed, nor is any of the undeveloped current use portion of the campground being developed or coming out of current use. In May, this board determined that the proposed improvements are allowed accessory uses and are consistent with the zoning ordinance. The abutters appealed that decision to the ZBA. On July 25th, the ZBA upheld your decision that the proposed improvements are consistent with the ordinance, and there's been no rehearing request filed by the abutters. The fact that these proposed amenities are allowed accessory uses is a final decision. No appeal. We prevailed on that. The issue today is whether or not what we're proposing is consistent with the requirement of the site plan regulations. I would urge the board, when you do consider this application, to please focus on the site plan regulations, as I know you will, and not on the use issues. And I'd urge you to limit comments tonight to the site plan regulation issues, given that the use piece of this has already been finally determined. I'll ask Mr. Flores to give you an overview, a specific overview of the plan, but 3 points I want to make from a site plan review regulation perspective. Again, there's no expansion of the allowed number of users on the site. We're not adding any campsites, and these amenities will be for campers and their guests only. This will not be stuff that is open to the general public. So no additional users will be allowed on the campsite. Therefore, there's no traffic issues by approving this site plan. Number 2, as I've already said a couple times tonight, the area where we're proposing the amenities is adequately buffered from surrounding properties. 750 feet to the nearest property line, where the allowed buffer is 25 or 40 feet in any given direction. So there's plenty of space. These amenities are confined to the interior of the campground. And 3, and we just heard staff's proposed conditions, a lot having to do with the pool and what happens with the water, and that's Dan's territory. Those are all acceptable to us. One of the things I want to note is that when we were trying in the previous application with the ZBA to expand the number of campsites on the campground, one of the concern was increasing the number of users on the pond. We're not doing that here. In fact, these amenities, given the conditions that we have agreed to, will actually reduce the use of the pond, because we're providing another alternative for our campers to do something else besides use the pond. So to the extent that people go and use the pool, they're not in the pond, it will reduce use of the pond, not increase it. With that, I'll turn it over to Dan to talk about any engineering specific things that are above my pay grade.
As Roy had mentioned, this is kept within what is defined as the existing campground area. Back on the 2012 site plan, this is a revision 2. I do have some photos I could share of kind of an example of what this would be.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had these out too while we were here.
How much extra did you pay to get the beach?
That's gonna be in.
So, looking at the plan that's over there on the, on my left, you can see there's a pool right in the center. That whole area today is a grass lawn used for camper storage. And the area to the right that shows the parking area, that's currently a maintenance area. And then there's a hillside where the mini golf will go. The pool in the center will be about 90 by 95 feet and 4 feet deep. There's a water playground to the left of it, which the photo illustrates. That's 110 by 115 feet, and that's 8 inches deep. There'll be slides erected on one end. Those will be 15 feet tall maximum. There's a mini golf at the bottom. That's currently a hillside. That's 80 feet by 240 feet. There's a bathhouse and pavilion on the right beside the pool. There's a small mechanical building below the water playground and relocated trailer storage or camper storage near that greenhouse area. We did review this with TRC back on December 4th. We have addressed their comments. We did maintain the 50-foot buffer to all wetlands that are greater than 3,000 square feet. We've also designed a leach field to the right of the greenhouse that's kept 500 feet from the water of Fish Pond. The stormwater management system includes bioretention areas. There's 3 of them. 2 of them are on the left. A third is between the mini golf and the greenhouse. Those are designed both to treat and infiltrate the stormwater. And we did receive alteration of terrain permit from the state of New Hampshire DES. And the permit number is AOT 1608, which I've included. So that takes care of all of the land disturbing activities and stormwater for this project. The amenities, just to throw some numbers at you, the total impervious area that we propose for all of that would be 66,350 square feet. If we look at the entire lot today developed, that goes from 6.3% of the lot to 7%. So just a very fractional increase. If we look at just the campground area developed to today, we go from 16.3% to 18.5%, which is still below the 20% within the shoreland requirements of the zoning ordinance. That's about it. Any specific questions I could answer? I could discuss pool discharge. Okay. Maybe I should probably go over there. Is it okay?
All right, before we proceed any further, when I open up to public comments, there is a rational prioritization involved here. You have heard from the applicant. The highest priority speaker after the applicant are abutters. I do not intend to challenge you if you happen to say you're an abutter. If you tell me you're an abutter, I will accept that. Abutters have the priority. After abutters, those with direct a direct contact are second priority. And then the third priority is people with more general interest. Okay?
Direct
Question?
contact.
I'm sorry?
What do you mean by direct contact?
Direct interest that would be not an abutter, but some more,
Townhouse Road, resident.
well, it's not necessarily geographic, but a closer association than the general public.
May I ask a
Okay?
question?
In a minute. Questions come to me, not to the board, although if the board specifically wants to answer a question, then they will do that. But questions don't bounce around in the room. I don't want to get too bureaucratic on you, but we have to maintain some sense of order to accomplish the task that we have at hand.
Point of order.
Okay?
I'm Norman Turgeon.
Mm-hmm.
I am former president of TPPA. Would you consider TPPA has a considerable interest in this?
I would.
Would you be considered part of that group that you would say is priority two?
Correct. I would say that is the direct interest as opposed to a more general interest. Okay, and thank you for telling us who you are and what your representation is, because that is the first item of business when you are recognized. So I would ask for abutters.
I'm a butter.
A butter.
My name's Brian Kearns, actually on
Before
highway.
we, I don't think Dan had finished his presentation yet.
No, I was going to just walk through quickly some of the environmental issues.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you.
He was just going to get to the map, so.
Okay.
Can't read too long here, okay?
I'll be quick. I just wanted to go over a few things. Again, just real quick, the pool is here, the water playground is here. We're providing a holding tank for a filtration system, so all backwash gets discharged to a holding tank, pumped, and taken off-site. The holding tank does have a high water alarm, and that's detailed in the plans. For end of season, maintenance of the pool and such, we provide a infiltration area. And if you look at note number 17, I believe it is, states the requirements for that use, and that the chlorine level has to be at 0.2 milligrams per liter or less. So anyway, so we're providing for an area to discharge that without going to the stormwater system. We've also provided water supply here, potable water. It's an existing well. We've talked to water supply at the state about requirements to continue using that. We've taken their recommendations into account when we designed this by keeping all open water 50 feet from the well. We've raised the well area up a bit, so that'll continue to be used with the development. And the leach field, just to show, is down in this area. And that meets all, more than exceeds all required setbacks.
Now we're done. Thank you, folks. Appreciate it.
Okay. I'm sorry that I jumped the gun there.
No problem.
Okay. Does the board have any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I just got one. On the relocated parking areas for the RVs or whatever, the trailers, what's the surface of that parking area?
Yep, a portion of it is gravel, and then we've used gravel pave, which is a pervious technology.
Right.
It is recognized by the state, and again, that's part of our alteration of terrain permit to use that technology.
Thank you.
Sufficient?
One more question, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Is there proper handicap access to all these facilities and everything else?
Yes, they will be.
Okay.
All right, sir, please.
Yeah, hi, I'm Brian Kearns, actually live on Hideaway. I don't mind saying where I live. See George all the
Just
time.
ensure that the,
Every power around which I see George.
ensure that the clerk has your name.
Brian Kearns, Kearns.
Thank you.
Anyway, I guess it's a point of process. I mean, a lot of people here, it seems we have no input before the board votes. I mean, it's a 7-1-0-7 vote. 100 people have some input, and we don't get any input till the vote's done. So talking now is kind of like, okay, nice, but waiver 1 was rejected. I think that waiver 2 was some discussion. I think 6-1. I mean, I'm in a butter. Chlorine's an infrastructure committee. Just paid $3,000 for a pump. You know, filter systems, all that type of stuff, and they didn't say how many butters it's going to be. You know, this continuation's been going on for months. It's hard to believe, me being an engineer myself, that there's no plan. They couldn't say print today. I'll take the word that there's no plan. So it's hard to believe we're, you know, ever since we voted last November in this process, that the plans aren't further along than what they are. So I appreciate the rejection of the first waiver because there wasn't a plan, but the second waiver got approved, and in my opinion, there was still no plan was presented to the team. Like you were saying with the lighting, I mean, I'm actually a lighting engineer, so I know all about lighting, and just a blanket approval waiver without a plan.
Right.
You guys are all engineers, landscapers, always have plans before they start a project. They don't start the project and then come up with a plan. They don't show up day one for a landscaping business and say, what am I going to do today? They got a plan coming into it. So I was a little remiss about the board voting to approve waiver number 2. I support the one guy that did reject this, so that's my input on that. And as far as the chlorine, the abutment plan there's no number of plans of having people to test. One test on Hideaway, one test here, one test there. So I'd at least see a plan before you guys do accept it, that there is some kind of some impact to those that are directly right across the street or nearby. Because I didn't see any abutment plan of who's being tested, number being tested. I mean, there's got to be a sampling rate. This guy's an engineer. He knows how many to sample in order to determine the water's good. It's an engineering thing, so it should be pretty easy to determine how many sites need tested to ensure we're not being impacted by the chlorine levels or discharge or wastewater or any of that type of stuff. So, okay, thank you.
Any other abutters?
I'm John Locke, I live on Bowling Road, I'm a direct abutter to Mighty Joe Campground, I own about 55 acres or so.
Okay.
And if Norm is saying that this proposal is gonna do a great damage to the lake and the milfoil and the weeds, this letter he sent out to us, that I read, he sent me an email, I don't understand why you're even considering any of this. I don't get it. If the TPPA says it's gonna greatly affect the lake, the weeds, the milfoil, we're gonna have a problem, we're gonna have a swamp, not a lake, why are we trying to approve anything with Mighty Joe Campground? I don't get it. And this guy says it's 875 feet from the nearest abutter, then he says it's 650. Which is it? 650, 750, 875? Which is it? He made 3 statements tonight in 3 different measurements. And why he would come here with no plans, like that man Mr. Kearns just said, is absurd. How much can you expect us to keep coming back here and keep arguing this point to make time to come to these meetings? We're the taxpayers. I pay a huge tax bill on my property. And it upsets me greatly that I gotta make time to keep coming back to these meetings because they keep getting tabled or shelved or whatever. Make a decision. Listen to what Norm is saying about the water and the milfoil and all that. Make a decision based on somebody that has a great more intelligence than me.
Abutter?
I live next to Brian. What are you going to do about more violations? Because they're just not going to stop at the sand piles that my husband and I see when we go by the campground. I thought sand brought in was illegal. And one of you has a picture floating around where the spas are leaking into the lake. So if they're doing violations now, what else are they going to do that will upset us? We already know that there's riffraff on the lake. There's not even a lifeguard on duty. And I'm right next door, and I see those crazies. They're out there with these noodles in the middle of the lake, and nobody is rescuing them but me screaming to come back in, or you're going to get yourself killed. So there's no plan, and what about the noise? The noise is a huge level now. It's past 10 o'clock. It used to be quiet at 10, 9:30 tops, but it's now at 11, 11:30, and we're still hearing riffraff. Guys, you're not considering what their big plan is and how it is affecting our town.
Can you state your name, please?
Kim Silva?
Thank you, Kim.
I'm Skip Bridges. I'm listed as a abutter. More or less as a point of order, I would like not to be precluded from speaking a little bit later once I've heard other people's comments. And I would also like a chance to review Mr. Woodruff's conditions before I make any final comments of my own. So I hope you're not saying that you have to speak now as an abutter, but that you can speak later when you've heard further information.
That is what we did first.
I did not hear that.
Okay, we have a continued public hearing in October, because then we will have a plan that we are looking at. Okay, and that is the scope of our task, is to look at this plan as we have directed it to be modified.
As I say, it was just a point of order.
Okay.
It sounded to me like you were saying, okay, speak now or forever hold your peace, and
No, I was establishing the sequence
to do that.
so that, and a priority, I said the priority, but
Thank you.
it was a sequence as well. Any other abutters? A butter?
I'm an abutter, Steve Baker. I live on Micah Terrace. I've got so many things going around in my head for the last 2 years over these issues. The number one thing that bothers me the most is the town of Milton. 60% voted against this whole thing, okay? Yeah.
I'm
When
confused.
there was an election. Last election, there was a major issue looking for input, and looking for a vote on whether we should proceed with building Disneyland, i.e. expanding Mighty Joe, and it was defeated. Okay, just have that as footnote number one.
Okay.
Footnote number two, we've got probably the most acclaimed water quality expert in New Hampshire, living within a rock's throw of here, 100 yards away. And he has said over and over, we're overloading the ponds. We're playing with disaster. The 3 ponds are the economic engine of this town. And yet we keep pissing in the water, okay? Pardon my French. And number 3, we've got our own Conservation Commission, who has come out time and time again, who said this is the wrong way to go. And yet, here we go, down the road. Let's just keep meeting until they wear us down and build Disney World down the street. I don't know what we have to do to convince the planning board and everyone else that we're making a big mistake here. I'm the current president, but the past president, smartest guy I know, has got more information and more work in his guns that he could shoot at you, and you know, it's just, it seems fruitless. Why do we continue to do this? I just don't get it. I would like to nominate the rest of my plan or discussion to an abutter who is going to raise his hand, but as far as I'm concerned, there's more to say on the subject.
May I?
Sure.
I am not technically an abutter, but I live closer to the Mighty Joe campground than many of others. It's just that my property doesn't extend all the way to Lyman Road. That's why I'm not an abutter. So if you permit me to speak now, I will.
Well,
But I will
direct-
qualify that by saying I'm
that's-
not an abutter.
You would have been probably close to next in the priority order that I listed. So you may.
Fine. Could I Can I ask you to move just a little bit so that I can get a little closer and see the folks with me on the phone. As I said, it's Norman Turgeon. I live on Lakeside Drive. I am not speaking as an abutter, I'm speaking as a member of the Board of Directors of TPPA. I will try to project.
I was gonna say, yeah, good.
Anyway,
There you go.
can you hold this one? First of all, the Board of Directors of TPPA wanted to submit our input in writing. And so I've done so. I have a memorandum here, which is addressed from the TPPA Board of Directors to the Milton Planning Board. And I would like to read it for the public. But before I do, because there have been other things said that mentioned me, I will tell you that a couple of weeks ago, our board was thinking about coming before this board to recommend that there be some approval conditions imposed, much along the lines of those that the town planner has given you. And in fact, I did meet with the town planner and asked him if he would be agreeable to work with us to come up with mutually agreed to conditions. We never got to that point because eventually our board decided that because of the uncertainty of the total scope of the developer's plan, which is greater than, certainly, I'm not talking about the site plan for the amenities. I'm talking about their plan to convert Mighty Joe to a resort-style park as they have advertised in the Northgate website. That scope is much greater than that symbol, than the small-scale site plan.
But you are
Because of the
suggesting,
uncertainty of that aspect, the board decided that we would instead propose to you tonight that you disapprove this site plan until such time as the developer has disclosed the full scope of his plan to convert the Mighty Joe Campground to a resort-style park. So that's what this letter essentially is. So let me read it. Dear Planning Board members, the subject site plan is for a part of the developer's plan to convert Mighty Joe to a resort-style park of the kind advertised in Northgate Resort's website, where Mighty Joe is described as one of our resorts. While we are concerned that the amenities in the site plan could potentially adversely affect the Milton Three Ponds and groundwater aquifers, we are far more concerned with other parts of the developer's plan that have not been disclosed to you for review. In considering whether to approve or disapprove the current site plan, you should not turn a blind eye to those undisclosed parts of the developer's total plan, which are likely far more harmful to our natural resources. So we strongly recommend you disapprove this site plan and require the developer to comply with the intent of your site plan review regulations by seeking approval for their entire plan and detailing the critical design features of that plan that will protect public health and that of the Milton Three Ponds. The attorney for the, I'm ad-libbing now, the attorney talked about focusing our comments on the site plan regulations, and I intend to do that. Consider the following relevant facts. All three ponds are at risk of becoming seriously impaired due to phosphorus loading from stormwater runoff. The data in enclosure 1 and 2, and these are, you can look at those if you want. I've given a copy of this to the clerk who's probably provided to you already. But the data in those enclosures show that phosphorus over the last 2 years in the northeast pond was at an unacceptably high level. And that is true of the other ponds as well. According to UNH Professor of Biological Sciences, Dr. Jim Haney, even a small increase in phosphorus levels could push the ponds into a state of toxic cyanobacteria blooms. He says the question is not whether the planned development would negatively impact the water quality in Northeast Pond, but rather how great the impact would be and whether the increased health risks are justified. We must be certain, this is not Dr. Haney speaking now, this is EPPA. We must be certain that any development plan includes a stormwater management plan designed to ensure no increase in phosphorus loading. At Mighty Joe, this plan must take into account all impervious surfaces that are part of the development, not just those of the amenities. Your site plan review regulations require that no development shall be established, nor shall any structure be erected, except in conformity with a site plan approved by the planning board. And no site work shall occur in advance of the site plan review. Hold on this one. These requirements are meaningless if you allow the developer to continue what he has started without site plan review. He has installed 27 structures described in his new Mighty Joe website as meadow cottages and lake bluff bungalows. These are in enclosures, shown in enclosures 3 and 4 of our memo. The website describes these as cabins. They are not on any approved Mighty Joe site plan, and the site work in the Meadows area occurred this spring. Although the developer describes these structures as cabins in his website, and also says cabin camping, is the way to go at Mighty Joe, he has publicly stated that they are not cabins, but park model RVs, not regulated by our zoning ordinance, and that he can legally install them on every campsite at the Mighty Joe campground. What stormwater management infrastructure has the developer installed to control runoff caused by these 27 structures? Apparently none. How many more of these structures does he plan to install without permits or site plan review to reach his target occupancy level? No one knows. But based on what he's done at other campgrounds, like Westwood Shores of Ossipee, the number could well exceed that which no stormwater management plan would be capable of handling. Perhaps some of you believe that that Milton will benefit from a Mighty Joe expansion through an increase in property tax base. If so, consider this. Even if they were to increase the number of cabins to 150, and the town taxes them at a fair market value, this would yield about $75,000 annually. Conversely, if the ponds are impaired from phosphorus loading, the reduction in the other waterfront property values will cost the town about $450,000 annually, a burden that would shift to all Milton property taxpayers. Remember also, and I'm getting close to the end, folks. Remember also that this developer has appealed to the New Hampshire Supreme Court to overturn this town's earlier decision to deny permission to expand the campground and to install amenities essentially the same as are on the current site plan. In our opinion, it would be terribly unwise for town officials to undo part of this decision and give the developer a basis to suggest that the court rule against the town. In summary, the site plan before you for review tonight is incomplete. The developer is asking you to buy a pig in a poke by approving a relatively small part of his plan to convert Mighty Joe without knowing his entire plan. Don't reward this developer for this, and also for violating your site plan review regulations by installing 27 cabins in advance of any site plan review. And don't underestimate the adverse consequences of undoing the town's earlier decision about these amenities before the New Hampshire Supreme Court rules on the developer's appeal to that decision. Disapprove this site plan and require the developer to comply with the intent of your site plan review regulations by seeking approval for their entire plan and detailing the critical design features of that plan that will protect public health and that of the Milton 3 bonds. Respectfully submitted, Norman Turgeon, for the Board of Directors of TPPA. Thank you very much.
So I suppose it is appropriate to tell you that some theoretical future plan would have to come here as a separate and distinct site plan. This site plan is this site plan. So, a theoretical future is
May I comment?
a theoretical future.
It's not theoretical, it's going on. It's going on. They've already put 27 structures. They're already advertising. If you read the website, the enclosure, you'll see what it says there is, would you like to have your extended family visit, but you don't have enough room in your trailer? Then cabin camping is the way to go. It's not theoretical. Based on everything else they've done, we believe that their plan to increase the occupancy levels, more people, is by putting these park model trailers every place they can. Call it speculation, call it theoretical. It's based on what they've done elsewhere. It's based on what they're doing now. I know that you cannot consider approval or disapproval of that future development. But I don't think you can turn a blind eye to what's going on when you consider this. And you can certainly, if not disapprove it, you can certainly defer approval until they've told you what they're going to do to execute the rest of their stated plan to convert Mighty Joe to a resort-style park.
So, any other abutters? And a butter?
Joan Goulet, 6 Hideaway Lane. I would like to know if they got any permits at all to put a whole circle of those huts, whatever you want to call them, at all. Camp models, whatever you want to call them. I'd like to know if they got any permits for those, or was that come under site plan review, or how did they get that in there? Close, thank you.
I don't buy it. Brian's the only one can answer
Yeah,
that.
unfortunately, the chair is not here tonight. The chairman is not here tonight. he is the code enforcement officer. So code enforcement would be able to comment on, there is a statement in this letter that implies, and I guess I have to go to the lawyer for that, but
Wouldn't you have those plans before you? Wouldn't they have been approved before on your board to have these trailers pulled in?
if they are trailers, no, because trailers,
Well, they're on wheels, let's put it that way, but they're not trailers.
okay.
They're definitely cottages. I see them every time I pull in my road.
You
I
want,
would just, they've asked us for a response, and they're laughing at me, said response, it's not my turn, but I want to respond. The code enforcement officer is well aware of all these conditions that you've heard about today. George works directly with him, he knows what's going on. Whether we have permits, I don't know, but the fact is, the code enforcement officer knows about it, agrees that we can do it, has no issue with it. We're putting recreational vehicles on campsites, and that's what campgrounds do. It's really, and the other point I would make about all of this, these are all issues they raised with the ZBA in their appeal, and they lost that appeal. It has nothing to do with the site plan application before you, whether this particular plan meets your site plan regulations. If there's violations on site and the code enforcement officer thinks so, there's things he can do about that. We're working with him, we don't think there's any violations, he's happy, but if he's not, we'll work with him to make it.
I'm sorry, you've already spoke. A butter? You said you were in a butter? Oh, you have, okay. In the back here? No? Right here. Yes, ma'am.
Regard 81 Lakeside Drive, and I'm very pleased to see all of you. We've become a group of people that know each other well over 2 years. I have first a question for the board in general, and then secondly a request. The question is, when a new site plan is submitted, isn't it required that it be significantly different than any prior refused site plan?
No,
That's
ma'am.
a law in the state where I live. Is it not this law in New Hampshire? Is the lawyer here?
The town attorney is not here. Our
Okay,
town attorney is not here. Clarification.
Yes. Shouldn't you know that? The word significantly different is not part of the code or part of the requirements of your board.
In our codes, if there is a significant change in the character, then a major site plan is submitted, which would be different than a minor site plan. But that's where that distinction that I
So
is that what-
to me, this
I know, but that's what I'm trying to get at the question.
No
The applicant, the
significant
answer
change.
to the lady's question
Okay.
is that the applicant is proposing a revision to their existing approved 2012 site plan, which was approved by this board. And that site plan revision does not in any way expand the campground, which would be against the zoning decision.
No.
The decision that was
2012 was a
adjudicated in the Supreme
different
Court.
owner and a different plan, a totally different issue. So anyway, that's my first question, and I'd like the rest of you, and maybe Larry, who has the book in his hand, to help us with that. And my second, after that, after he responds, is like Steve Baker, I would like to refer to Cindy Wyatt, because her issues as the town conservation commissioner, is that right? Chair. Are the same as those of all of us who really treasure the lake. I agree with Steve that the lake is the economic engine, and that's what we all want. We want the economy of Milton to succeed. Those of us who are summer residents as well as permanent residents. We need We need the town and we need each other, but most of all, we need the lake and the master plan. So my other request is that when you consider the town planner's additional requirements in terms of conservation criteria in October, would they please justify each one in terms of the town master plan? Okay, Cindy, may I have permission to yield to Cindy?
If I have no more abutters,
Yes, there's one.
one more abutter, okay?
Just as a point of order.
Excuse me.
It is-
That
Hold on.
this is not, one, a court of law, two, we are not meeting as the ZBA, and three, this is not a quasi-judicial operation. It is not necessary to keep bringing the phrase from television, point of order. Do you have something you want to say personally?
I can say
Say
whatever I
it.
want, sir. Can I not? I do not need to get shouted down when I stand up.
I recognized you as an abutter,
Thank you.
so
It is not true that the ZBA considered the violations that Norm mentioned. They refused to hear any evidence with regard to that. They only heard testimony on whether this application required a special exception. They refused to hear anything about the cabins, anything about any other violations that were brought before them. That's number one. So it is not final with regard to those issues, and you very much should consider them, because if you know that those things are going on, you ought to consider their effect on this site plan. And second, it is not true that the ZBA's decision was final, because that appeal, and I know because I filed it, was on the basis that you had approved both of those waivers. And then I found out later with the minutes that you had not. Of course, that's not what it looked like when I was there, but you had not. So the ZBA did not have the elevations for these particular buildings and the water park before it, so it did not have the evidence for it to consider whether this was exactly the same as what had been considered before.
nor should they
So I
have.
would have to argue that that was not a final decision on that, and that you surely can consider a zoning issue in that regard. Thank you.
May I now yield?
I haven't. One more abutter?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I'm wondering if we could request that the building inspector be here at the next meeting. I'm really concerned about allowing those 27 cabins to come in without any kind of permits at all.
I would expect him to be here next meeting.
Pardon me?
I would expect him to be here next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
May I ask Cindy why to say
I'm
thank
still,
you?
are there any other abutters? Okay, I would say, Cindy, you are
Yes, over here.
another,
What have you done lately about the violations on just the spas being drained into the lake at the end of the season?
is that, I can't comment on that. No information.
You should know about that. There's a picture flying around here. Someone took a picture of it. And what about the sand violations that are brought in? What have you done about that?
I'm not sure what you expected us to do about that.
Isn't
So-
bringing sand in a violation for adding to your beach?
Huh? Go ahead.
The,
Okay.
the structure of municipal government, not to sound too overbearing, is that documents are available under public request. There is a separation between the planning board, which has no executive authority, We are not the code enforcement officer, neither are we the ZBA, which has power to make a quasi-judicial decision if whatever the circumstances are. To answer your question as to whether or not sand is illegal is to go to get a public record of what sand has been delivered, to ask of the code enforcement officer, 652-4501, extension 7, and ask to find out what the regulations are for the importation of sand. Then you will have that answer. But to bring that question to the planning board and expect us to have some stick to beat the poor driver of the sand truck, that is not the structure and function of the planning board. If there is a violation, then you have to file a form that statute number ABC subparagraph 123 has been violated.
To my knowledge, it has been filed.
That, is there any requirement that you have to go through the expert system of questions before you have an answer? And I don't hear that you have done that. And that just any question that you have. Does the town require a yellow line on Townhouse Road? No. Is there one there now? Yes. Is Mighty Joe helping to pay for it? I have no idea. But there is a structure for finding out information. And Ashley is learning the ropes. If there is a statute, if you wish to complain to DES, which has major jurisdiction over wetlands, if you wish to file a complaint with DES, which has authority over gravel excavation under 155:E, that is the process to take. I'm sorry to go on, but that process is entirely outside of this meeting, though it may be accurate and heartfelt. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was.
Thank you, Larry.
I hope that was
better job than where I was going.
I hope that was accurate and heartfelt.
Now we go to. I thought Cindy was done. No.
We can go to Cindy. I have a butter. I have a question. I can wait. Cindy, go ahead.
Hi, good evening. So I'm Chair of Milton Conservation Commission, Cynthia Wyatt, and I have 3 things to read to you, so bear with me.
Just pick it up.
Have you?
Is that better? Okay.
Have you
All
provided those comments to the clerk?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
One I did not, but it's short. So this is to the Milton Planning Board. Dear Planning Board members, the Milton Conservation Commission called a special meeting on August 27th to discuss its concerns regarding the Milton Planning Board's acceptance of the site plan submitted by Three Ponds Resort to develop a resort amenities for Mighty Joe Campground in a sensitive ecological area of the Milton Three Ponds. Members of the Three Ponds Protective Association were invited and several members attended. Other concerned neighbors were present and voiced their concerns. The Milton Conservation Commission, as an advisory land use board, calls the Planning Board attention to the 2017 update to the Natural Resource Chapter of Milton's Master Plan. The Master Plan is the foundation to guide town officials in the overall character, growth, and development of a community. This update includes a 2015 community survey. The survey revealed that the top 3 goals, with 90% public support, is to, quote, prioritize water quality in Milton Three Ponds, ensure drinking water quality, and protect Milton's lakes, streams, and wetlands. In the section dedicated to the Milton Three Ponds, the master plan states, "The three ponds represent a prime source of tourism and tax revenue for Milton. Properties with pond access are assessed at higher values relative to the rest of Milton and therefore generate significantly higher tax revenues. The ponds attract seasonal occupants and the tourists that contribute to the overall economic health of Milton by infusing the local economy with non-resident retail and service business. The ponds are a key element of Milton's health, community character, and are crucial to Milton's quality of life." Based on the master plan, which is the town's guiding planning document, input from TPPA, and the scientific evidence from Dr. Jim Haney, UNH Professor of Biological Sciences with a doctorate in aquatic biology and limnology, and is a Milton resident. Based on this information, the Milton Conservation Commission strongly advises the Planning Board not to approve Three Ponds Resort site plan application for the following reasons. Number one, the three ponds are in an exceptionally fragile state. Based on 30 years of lake monitoring data, TPPA advises that the shallow depth of the three ponds have left the ponds in an exceptionally fragile state due to stress from the invasive European naiad and past blooms of cyanobacteria, vulnerability to increased nutrients from stormwater runoff in the watershed, and increased human activity, including motorized boats. According to Dr. Haney, even a small increase in phosphorus and nitrogen, this is a repeat, but it's worth hearing, only a small increase in these nutrients. Sorry, lost my place. Even a small increase in phosphorus and nitrogen levels could push the Milton Three Ponds into a state of toxic cyanobacteria blooms. Dr. Haney states that impacts of shoreland development on water quality are well known and have been studied intensively. The question is not whether such a development would negatively impact the water quality in Northeast Pond, but rather how great this impact would be and whether the increased health risks are justified. Considering the fragility of the lake, the impact of the proposed development would most likely be considerable. And number two, increases of impervious surfaces. According to the Three Ponds Resort site plan, the total disturbed land area is calculated to be 248,300 square feet, or 5.7 acres. Even though the application is described as minor, please note that the impervious area increase in the application is 66,300 square feet, or an acre and a half. With the swimming pool, water playground, hot tubs, mini golf course, and buildings, this does not include the additional impervious surfaces created by the roofs of the 27 new camping cabins that are already in place without town permitting. An increase in impervious surfaces increases the likelihood of greater stormwater runoff and nutrient loading. Number three, increase in groundwater withdrawal and disposal. The Commission is concerned about the potential impact of groundwater withdrawal for the 90 by 85 swimming pool, the 90 by 100 water playground, and several rental hot tubs. There is also concern about the disposal of the contaminated water. Many neighbors are justifiably concerned about their wells. For this reason, the Commission recommends a third-party professional hydrological study of this proposal's impact on the groundwater due to proposed large withdrawals and the on-site disposal of contaminated water. And number four, this is important, and I think this needs to be revisited. I think we all think, the TPPA and the Conservation Commission. The Planning Board voted that this plan does not have regional impact. Based on the information provided in this letter, and from the letter I'm going to read from Jim Haney, the Planning Board should consider this decision. The towns of Acton and Lebanon would be profoundly impacted by the degradation of water quality and the increased risk of cyanobacteria blooms in the ponds. The downstream towns of Somersworth and Berwick rely on the Salmon Falls River for their public drinking water supply. The Commission believes that based on the information stated in this letter, it would be irresponsible and negligent not to pursue regional impact. In June of 2018, the Milton Zoning Board of Adjustment denied Three Ponds Resource Plan to expand the campground inclusive of the amenities. The fragile tipping point of the Three Ponds was an important and compelling reason for the ZBA denial. This tipping point state is substantiated by science-based data and analysis by Dr. Haney and cataloged by TPPA. The MCC, the Milton Conservation Commission, strongly advises that the Planning Board immediately suspend review of the application until more professional studies can be provided on the serious environmental and economic impacts of the site plan. The potential economic cost to Milton and the neighboring towns for remediation expenses, for increases of cyanobacteria outbreaks, increases in invasive species, other water quality degradation, as well as resulting negative impacts on the town's assessment base could be staggering and must be considered when deliberating about this application. Furthermore, neighboring and downstream towns should be notified and given the opportunity to comment on the proposed site plan as part of the Planning Board's deliberative process. In summary, the Planning Board appears to be seriously deviating from the Town of Milton's Master Plan's top 3 priorities that ensure Milton's environmental water quality. And the next letter is actually a statement from Dr. Haney, and it's entitled Milton Three Ponds, Sensitivity to Disturbance and the Cost of Degraded Water Quality. The Town of Milton has been fortunate to have the Three Ponds Protective Association, one of the most effective citizen monitoring groups in New Hampshire, monitoring the water quality of Townhouse Pond, Depot Pond, and Northeast Pond. The data they have collected each year for nearly 3 decades has allowed us to track changes and better understand the condition of the lakes and their vulnerability to pollution. We know, for example, that all 3 lakes have intermediate water quality, and because Northeast Pond is largely shallow, it is the most sensitive to invasion by aquatic weeds and outbreaks of toxic cyanobacteria. Concerns for the lake quality have changed since monitoring began on Milton Three Ponds. The recent increase in the blooms of toxigenic cyanobacteria in New Hampshire lakes, as well as throughout New England, have focused concern of states and the U.S. concern of the states of this country, and the U.S. EPA on the potential effects of cyanobacteria on public health. For example, lakes in the Wakefield area have recently had lake advisories warning the public against recreational use of these lakes until the cyanobacteria concentrations become less than 70,000 cells per milliliter limit. Through lake monitoring, we know the same toxic cyanobacteria present and produced blooms in Milton Three Ponds. One of the underlying causes of the increase in blooms is the release of nutrients, phosphorus and nitrogen, into the lakes, caused by disturbance of soils near the lake shore and the lake watershed. Stormwater drainage, often accompanying development, also exacerbates the problem by flushing released nutrients directly into the lake during rain events. Much like fertilizers applied to a garden, cyanobacteria respond to the added phosphorus and nitrogen by growing and outcompeting the good algae in the system. Levels of concern about cyanobacteria blooms have grown with the results from recent scientific studies. For example, the deaths of dogs after short exposures to cyanobacteria-contaminated lake water have been confirmed in many states and indicate the serious danger of recreational activities in a lake with the surface scums of cyanobacteria. At UNH, the Center for Freshwater Biology, as well as other researchers across the country, have been working to examine the causes and the consequences of toxic blooms in lakes, from Lake Okeechobee in Florida to Lake Erie. For example, our laboratory will be investigating whether the recent death of a young common loon in Province Lake, and that's why Dr. Haney couldn't be here, because he's on Province Lake today with his grad students. They believe that the young common loon is related to the blooms of cyanobacteria known to produce a fast-acting nerve toxin. Also, our UNH team is working closely with the Association to Preserve Cape Cod, developing a citizen cyanobacteria monitoring program for the roughly 1,000 lakes on Cape Cod that have increasing incidence of toxic cyanobacteria. At Cape Cod, we are also examining potential cyanobacterial toxin contamination of the groundwater because of its porous sand, which in many ways is very similar to the Milton public water supply wells located in a sand lens between Northeast Pond and Townhouse Pond. There's also growing evidence that long-term exposure to lakes with toxic cyanobacteria through recreational activities and possibly through toxic aerosols emitted by the lakes may be linked to the non-alcoholic liver disease as well as neurological disorders such as Lou Gehrig's disease or ALS. In this regard, degraded water quality may be a potential threat and concern to citizens who simply live in the vicinity of the lake. The proposed expansion and development of Mighty Joe Campground would clearly represent a major disturbance and increase in human activity in the Milton Three Ponds watershed. Considering its close proximity to the eutrophication sensitive Northeast Pond, the likely consequence will be increases of loading of nutrients such as phosphorus. It's also important to note that once a lake develops cyanobacteria problems, the costs of short-term remediation are considerable. For example, this summer, Lake Attitash in Amesbury, Mass., which is 360 acres versus Milton Three Ponds 271 acres, underwent an allume treatment to reduce phosphorus at a cost of roughly $1.7 million. Across the country, communities near lakes are working to decrease the influx of nutrients and control or reverse their negative impacts, and that's what we need to do at this site. We need to decrease instead of increase. Protecting the health of the lake is a complex process that requires the cooperation of an informed town and its motivated citizens. It is hoped that in deliberating the expansion of the Mighty Joe Campground, the town of Milton will consider the costs of a decline in water quality in the Three Ponds, on the recreational use of the lakes, the long-term effects of the health of Milton citizens, the property values around the lake, as well as on future expenses for remediation. That's signed from Jim Haney. There's just one other short statement from Rachel Roulard, who is the director of the Salmon Falls Watershed Collaborative at UNH. And some of the project partners with this organization include the New Hampshire DES, Stratford Regional Planning Commission, Natural Resource Conservation District, and the EPA and the U.S. Forest Service. And she states, Milton is struggling with this important decision and potentially missing the mark on the myriad ways this development could potentially and will likely impact not just the Three Ponds, but water quality issues downstream. This scale of project certainly seems of a regional nature, especially given how new EPA permitting is being considered, that up-watershed communities will have responsibility for water quality degradation in receiving waters. More and more federal, regional, and local governments across the U.S. and in New Hampshire are erasing the political boundaries when it comes to water quality, because what one community does or doesn't do has impact beyond its borders. And in New Hampshire, the cost burden of fixing water quality problems is borne exclusively by residents, since New Hampshire doesn't have state funds to assist in major infrastructure upgrades. So if anything, the town might want to consider future cleanup and infrastructure costs associated with impaired waters as a result of any new development, and especially on sites with close proximity to a water body. Thank you.
So, anyone else with direct interest? Go, okay.
Got one more input, which we haven't heard about tonight. One of the things TPPA does is we pay to have boats inspected. For those of you who bring a boat down and put it in the water from outside the community, you have to pay to have one of the kids inspect the boat. We pay that $1.50 per boat. This year will be over 750 boats down here, and Jeff over at Jeff's Everett Cove is going to do about 900. That's 1,650 boats that we're bringing in from outside. That doesn't touch probably, I'm going to guess, 1,000 boats that are part of the 600 residents. Because if you look in your neighborhood, you know everybody has one or two boats with a motor on it. That's a lot of boats in a fairly small water body. That's just one more pollution.
What I would say, though, is what does that have to do with the campground?
It has to do with the water. And we're just adding one, well, let's just lay one more blob on the water that we can't afford to put down. I'm just trying to paint the entire picture.
So look at that fairly in the entire picture. You look at this one campground, but look at the specs. How many people out there that live on the lake have built and didn't pull permits when they built stuff? That's water runoff and everything else included. So everybody's at fault of this. We're selecting one person, one group. All right, everybody that lives on the lake has a share of it. Those of us that don't live on the lake help pay for that, just like you guys pay your higher tax rate. I get that. But to pinpoint one person isn't really fair when it's not the subject matter. As a whole, that watershed's everybody's responsibility, right? Lebanon, what do they do to ensure that nothing happens on their side of the lake? All those things come into play, right?
It's not.
But we don't have a point on that, and the point of the matter is we have no control over that.
Right, so, but we should, I mean,
So what do you say? Let's just keep going the way we're going. That's my point.
cut the number of boats.
I don't think we can.
I used to be able to swim across that lake. Yeah, you get run over. That was 20 years ago, you get run over.
All right, let's try and get more focused back on what we are supposed to be talking about.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Linda Kane in Milton Mills. If the Milton Three Ponds are already fragile, why do we want to continue to make them more fragile? And how are we going to reverse that?
Are
And
we
also,
doing-
also, if
Are
we're
we doing
going
that,
to-
though?
Pardon me?
Are we doing that?
Are we doing what?
Making them more fragile?
What did Cynthia just read? Oh my goodness.
Well, what she read had expansion in there a bunch of times, and we're not talking
All
about
right.
expansion.
I have another question.
All right.
If this is, we're gonna put this big Mighty Joe campground, we're gonna, make it big and like we're gonna be up in Weir's Beach,
That's
I don't
not
get-
what's on this piece of
Yeah,
paper.
well, I know that's not what's
Well,
there.
but that's-
if we
this
don't-
is
if
what we are talking about tonight.
If we agree to this one thing, when's the next one gonna come along?
We don't know, but when it does,
That's
we
right, we
then,
don't know.
it comes to us, and we address
So
that
if we let
when
this
it
one go,
comes.
if we let this one go and let it happen, the next one's gonna wanna happen also. New England, this is New England. Milton and Milton Mills is a great community. We want to stay New England. Is there something wrong with that? This is where we live. I don't live on the lake, but I love the lake. I moved here because I love this area. This is, I think most of these people here love it here. Is anybody here because they want to have Mighty Joe here?
You think any of us
Is
up
anybody
here
gonna
do it
speak up here,
because we don't
people?
like it? Do you think we volunteer our time every month,
come on,
twice a
that's-
month not to do that? We love it too. That's why we're here.
That's right. No one's talking about you.
All right, we're kind of go back on track here. Thank you. Larry?
I think that the question of regional impact was decided by the planning board, that the revision to the plan before us, that there was no regional impact. The reason that we are meeting this evening was that our previous meeting was 25 days into the 30-day clock, which meant no matter what action we took at day 25, there were 5 days left where a person could file an appeal. To the best of my knowledge and belief, there has been no appeal to the decision of the planning board that this particular plan in front of us had regional impact. No one has come forward to say it does have regional impact to the point where they have filed a complaint with this town. Therefore, that particular issue, as palatable, unpalatable, accurate, scientifically hypothesized or not, is moot, M-O-O-T, as opposed to mute, to this board. We are still, as the chairman keeps saying, looking at a revision to this plan. So, thank you for that time. Thank you.
Okay, any first time speakers. Yes, in the far corner.
Just really quickly, so you don't look at this as an expansion?
No. The expansion went to the zoning board,
But-
which
but
was
this is-
beyond
this
us.
is, let's see, where was that number? Hang on.
All right, while you're looking that up, go ahead.
It's 5.7 acres, the total land disturbance, and, which is 5.7 acres, and 1.5 acres of impervious surfaces that the county that doesn't include the 27. So, this is an expansion. You have to look at it that way. It's going to have impact.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. You're supposed to be protecting us as a region of the lake. We, the people here, voted for you. Now, aren't you supposed to protect us against people like this that want to pollute our waters and do things that aren't acceptable? To look, all the people here, how many people do you normally have at one of these meetings? And look at tonight. Aren't you supposed to protect us? My property just went up $41,000 in assessment. What's gonna happen when the lake isn't usable and it goes down to a half of what it is now?
You're supposed to represent us.
Yeah, well, represent the tax.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Nancy Coyne. I live on Micah Terrace, and I'm on the water. And my location on the water is at the most narrow point of the river, so I watch it intensely every day. I am also a former Mighty Joe seasonal camper, and I want to go on record by saying that in the 20 years that I spent there raising my kids, I didn't change that for the world. It was a wonderful experience, and to this day we have lifelong friends. My kids have lifelong friends as a result of that relationship. But it's not the same. And what I want to talk about, what I want to remind people, the board, the planning board here particularly, is I want to talk about integrity and believability. So it seems as though in the presentation by the engineer today that he talked about the site plan and how far the nearest abutter was and so on and so forth. And that's fine, the site plan. I don't know if we or any of the other residents and even the abutters are overly concerned about whether or not they see something on a regular basis, if they can see a zip line, if they can see a swimming pool. But every time something like that is done, it involves earth movement. And I have personal experience. Is anybody here familiar with the chain of lakes in the Midwest? 789,000 acres of water, all connected. Just a Milton Pond and Milton Three Ponds is a fraction of that. In one particular area, one business decided that they were going to expand. And they went before the board, they got the planning board, they got the zoning, they got everything. In an area of about 2 acres that they improved upon, that earth cut off a natural inlet. The homeowners that were in that inlet had it dredged, although the business owners were supposed to do that. They did it, but not to the homeowners' expectations. And this is the kind of thing I think we would be concerned about with the kind of earth movement that's going to happen. It doesn't take much. It takes a little bit of water runoff. It takes a little bit of sand and gravel to shift and make things a little bit different for water to carry other elements into the lake. And I think that's really, really what we're talking about. The people that bought this campground from the Maurice came to a year-end meeting and talked about how things were going to stay the same. They're very environmentally conscious. They love the family campground. They want to keep it the way that it is. Yeah, improve it, enhance it, and everything. And a week later, friends of ours that camped there for 22 years were given what we know as a pink slip, said you can't camp here anymore and we don't have any sites available for you. road into their campsite. All right. Shame on you. Shame on all of you for doing things like that. The seasonal campers got a bill for the very next season 50% higher than what their rates were. Shame on you. Is that about the environment? Is that about the people? Is that about the people in the campground? No, it's about the money. It's about the money. Camping is a wonderful experience, and you want to put in, the little jumpy things and all that. Great, I've jumped on it. It's fun, all right? But the kind of resort, it's not a campground. There is a campground element to what they want to make a resort. And the type of resort and the building that they're proposing is something that needs to be on a big lake. It needs to be in a bigger environment, not I'm going to go on record and say we're a poor town. We've got condemned buildings on Main Street. We've got people trying to make things right. This resort is not helping any of that take place, just the town. And again, I know we need to keep it about the water and keep it about Mighty Joe and all that, and that's what we're trying to do. Again, back to the improvements, and it's the earth movement. It's the earth movement. It doesn't take much, people. It's the draining. Yes, ma'am, they do. What I did see, because I have friends there, and I do see discharge from the hot tubs going into the little stream into the lake. So, all these promises, they want you to waive decisions, permits, whatever, without having a specific plan to provide to you. Oh, just give us the wherewithal, just give us the opportunity to do this, and then we'll give you a plan. Maybe there's something wrong with that. All right, shame on you.
My name is Kari Liger. I'm just curious, I believe this company has brought our town to court twice already. So my question is, how do we trust them to have our best interest and the lake's best interest with what they've already done?
We don't have to trust them. We follow the plan and ensure that what is required in the plan from DES, from the board, from our other things, that is what happens.
I appreciate that the first waiver was denied, but you gave them carte blanche on the lighting. And as Brian said, I just wouldn't trust these people. My own small thought.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Deborah Blair, almost in a butter, on Lakeside Drive. In light of everything that's been said, I'd like to go back to what this gentleman here, who was in a butter, said right at the beginning. And you're all here now, and you can tell us what you were thinking about the town of Milton, how bringing this corporation into Milton was going to help the town. And I've never heard a justification for, I think we look at, there are no real jobs, there's no real tax improvement here. The people of Milton can't participate. The list kind of goes on, but each one of you participated, I assume, in the decision to bring this corporation from Michigan into Milton.
No.
No.
Well,
Your assumption is
we have no.
So why are we doing this? Why are we bringing them in? Nobody ever sat down and said, gee, this would be really good for Milton? Somebody
go ahead, you can have that one. I can't go anywhere with that.
I understand everybody's frustrated. It's a very heated issue. But I think everybody needs to understand that the planning board and the town basically operates under state statutes, rules, regulations, ordinances, the ordinances that the people of Milton voted in. So nobody on this board or in the town can say a corporation or a particular person can't buy a particular business or piece of property in the town of Milton. That's way out of the authority of any board or the town as a whole. But what the boards have the authority and power to do is to enforce the ordinances and the rules and laws and regulations of the state. So the planning board is tied to Milton's ordinances. We have to look at the plan, make sure it complies with the ordinances that we, the residents of Milton, voted in.
Remember number 3?
Thank you.
What?
Ordinance number 3, I can't say we. The town by 61.2% voted down an amusement park in a low density area.
That was a ordinance change.
I don't know.
That was changing the ordinance. It wasn't for the campground, it wasn't for the resort. And I would encourage any of the planning board members to chime in if they like, or the town planner. But I think there's confusion. That ordinance change was not for the campground, it was not for this. Yes, it failed.
No, it actually was not.
Now, it was a zoning change.
It certainly applied.
It was a zoning ordinance change.
So I guess what I'm trying to get to is there's been a lot of testimony that we've heard from professionals in the field, and I don't doubt that they're incorrect or what they're saying is wrong. But what I'm struggling with here is, yes, okay, I think we all agree the water quality is a concern. I think everybody's on the same page there. All I seem to hear is it's going to impact, it's going to impact, it's going to impact. But I didn't see or hear any numbers that's really estimating how much is going to impact and what can we do. Now, let me step back. Bruce had met with TPBA and others, which was read earlier in the meeting to some suggested conditions which are supposed to address some of the issues. But we only have the authority to make Mighty Joe Campground, implement certain things so the water doesn't get in worse condition. So I think suggestions in that type of manner are going to be more successful tonight than continuing to go after the corporation or to go after the campground and the changes that have made play. Unfortunately, we are where we are tonight, and this board does have the authority to put those things on the plan and make the developer do that. We can't go back.
But you can also tell him no. And I don't hear no.
If it's meeting the site plan regulations, we cannot just say no.
Site plan.
But I mean, I can interpret, it's all in the interpretation. One of the things that I've learned here is, amenities and amenities, if the zoning board says no, they become accessory uses. And then it's okay. Find a way around. And this doesn't seem to be a direct, this is not going to be good for us. And nobody seems to, who can tell me, how is it going to help the town?
I'd like to ask one last thing, if you don't mind. So I think we all should learn from this experience, and I think for the future, what we need to do is really take a hard look at our ordinances and address them accordingly. So if we don't want something like this to come in, it's stated in the ordinances.
I got, we got one new speaker.
I sympathize with what you people
Name please, for the record.
Sylvester,
Yeah.
Mike Terry. I sympathize with what you have to deal with tonight. You're not alone. There are planning boards and zoning boards across the country that are dealing with the same issue, all right? But the prime directive for this town, all right, is its master plan. And you heard what Cindy talked about as to what the people went and said was the 3 most important things as part of that plan for the town of Milton. And water quality is number 1. Now, I just went and I looked up that National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration went and ruled that June and July of 2019 was the hottest 2 months in record since 1880. It just beat out 2016.
So what's happening, despite what some of our politicians will tell us, is that there is a global warming. And our ponds are shallow, they're getting warmer. We have the data from water testing to prove it. And therefore, it isn't gonna take much for anything, and regardless of Mighty Joe, I'm not talking Mighty Joe right now. I'm talking about anything that you people approve, all right? And other planning boards and zoning boards approve that could impact, all right, water quality. And temperature is one of the primary factors. So that if you don't accept what Dr. Jim Haney, all right, says in that letter that Cindy read, then I guess that we shouldn't discuss too much more. To me, it's not about a swimming pool. It's not about a pillow, jumping pillow. It's not about that. It's about anything that we do that could impact Milton Three Ponds. You know, most of us just got our assessments. They pretty much all went up, but I'm not worried about that yet till we find out what the tax rate's gonna be. But clearly what happens is that my assessment is tied, I live on Micah Terrace, is tied to water quality on Milton Three Ponds. That's why my land value went from $144,000 to $238, an increase in $96,000. So, am I concerned about what might happen to Milton Three Ponds? Damn right, all right, and we all should. And I know you are concerned as well. And again, that's not the topic for tonight, but it's part of the sub-topic of any kind of expansion that you people or ZBA approves. You have to be cognizant of the fact we just had the 2 warmest months on record since 1880.
Can I say something, please, if you don't mind?
Yes, you have the opportunity.
Thank you. I think that you guys don't realize I live on a pond. There's other people here that, you know, we're all part of Milton and we care about Milton. But we have regulations we have to follow. And that's where you guys have to take your vote and change those regulations. We have to stay within those regulations. It's not us that are making these demands. It's the regulations we have to stay within.
We'll still go first-time speakers.
So, I keep hearing that we need to go back in time and vote to change the ordinances. And I won't dwell on another controversial issue a few years ago that I was intimately involved in, where we tried to do that and we're told that it's exactly what we don't want to do. But I'll choose to focus on what we can do. You can instill conditions on a site plan. Right, you can demand that as a planning board.
As we did tonight.
And there were some conditions that were read. I think it would behoove a lot of people if that were made something that we could all see and read and consume. I would recommend that you consider strengthening them on the expert testimony from countless people tonight on the fragility of the ponds and how even very minor disturbances could cause major impacts. Maybe those conditions are enough. Maybe we need to strengthen them even further. You do have that capability. I've been away for a while. I haven't been involved in a lot of these meetings. And it's interesting to observe what's going on in the room, having not been a part of it for a long time. And I think a lot of the heated emotion comes from the fact that there is a distinct feeling from the front of the room that you're dismissing the testimony and the concerns of the people speaking to you.
Yes.
Your body language and your comments, and not everyone on the board, but several people on the board, has been very defensive and aggressive towards the citizens of Milton and very defensive of the applicant. So just something to consider. I think that's part of the reason why there's a lot of emotion in the room today. There are things you can do to protect the town as part of the normal site review process, and I recommend you do them. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Still going. First time.
Elaine Parker, I live on Townhouse Pond. So I second his thoughts that the conditions that were mentioned tonight need to be strengthened. They need to be stronger. They need to be broader. And what concerned me when I heard them was a lot of that
enforcement was self-imposed or self-regulated by the campground. And I'm not sure that that's where the authority and the regulation should, they should be outside regulated and monitored by outside parties to make sure that they are complying with the conditions. Secondly, living on Townhouse Road, I have noticed this summer already that the light pollution has increased and the sound pollution has increased. Those are already concerns. And if you're talking about lighting and sound, and as part of this piece, that is already happening, and so if you don't have regulations about that, it's only gonna get worse. And thirdly, we need to be smart and think scientifically. And we need to listen to Dr. Jim Haney and the other authorities who have researched and studied and used their expertise to help us protect the ponds. And the town needs to protect the ponds and care about the people who care about the ponds. Mighty Joe is a business, but we care about the ponds. And that's where we need to have our focus.
It seems to me that the ponds have been contaminated for years. And nobody, yeah, they have. This thing that you showed us today.
No, we have data to the contrary.
Sure, the phosphorus levels are way up.
So if we've been doing something wrong for
Years.
years, we continue to do it knowing it's wrong?
No, I'm just saying,
Yeah, letting a bunch of
nobody
votes in.
spoke up before.
All right.
It's only because these people are trying to do
All right, I'm
what's good for their
coming.
business.
We will bring it back to the topic at hand, okay, rather than stray. All right, I have a first-time speaker back by the window.
My name's Roy Edmonds. I live on St. James Street on the pond. And there is a decision made already. And what I'm speaking to is a change in the resort itself. From what it is to what they want to make it into. And I understand this is part of business. However, having said that, this body must have made a decision with the folks in the trailers to have a place to swim on Townhouse Road. And right now, that whole area has become unsafe because they park on the road. And because they want to swim there, I understand that's a problem. But when you make decisions that change things, like deciding that they can have this place on Townhouse Pond to be able to swim, it has created a problem because it's not safe. And now you're talking about changing the resort, changing the plans to put on these other features that are not there right now, which changes the nature of that resort. And we don't have to do that because it has been approved for what it is, not for what it wants to be. And we need to understand that. And what I'm saying, you already have Townhouse Road that is not safe. And now you're going to make it even more unsafe because they want to get more people in there on an ongoing basis, which is going to increase the amount of traffic flow. Even though the representative said there would be no more traffic, I don't believe it.
Oh,
Because that's not his
especially with
objective.
motorhomes coming in.
Now,
I'd like to be the lone voice here tonight to commend the planning board for the work that they have been doing, enforcing the zoning as it is, talking to somebody, whether it's a corporation or a private individual, allowing them to improve their private property in accordance with the town's existing zoning ordinances. Yes, they're asking for a couple of exceptions, but they're not extreme by any means. I appreciate the time that you have spent consulting the EPA, the inspection, the containment, all of the conditions that you put on this plan. I want a fixer-upper. And I wouldn't want the community telling me what I can and can't do with my property to improve it. As long as I met the ordinances that are in place, I applaud the people that are trying to do this to Mighty Joe to be able to be competitive in today's market with campgrounds. This is what the public wants. They don't want, a lot of people just want to come up for a weekend. They don't want to invest in a whole season with a trailer and all of that. They're changing the nature of that campground, no doubt about it. But I think with the trouble that everyone here, on the boards and the people that are trying to do this successful development, I appreciate the time and the study and the consideration that's gone into this site plan. And I appreciate the time of you people on the board listening to concerns of the citizens, but also doing the best that you can for the community to protect the ponds. I agree that the pollution or the sensitivity of the beautiful ponds that we have in our community is not something that happened overnight. There is something everybody that lives on the lake could do. They could not mulch when they mow their grass. They could get the grass off the ground. Because where does that nitrogen go? It goes back into the ground and it gets run off into the lake. There's a lot of reasons why the chemical levels are higher, and some of them are just as simple as not raking up your grass when you mow it. What about your hot tubs? What do you do when you winterize your house or your cabin? You empty it. Do you take that water someplace else? No, it all goes into the lake. There's a community here that's all contributing to the sensitivity of the resources, and we need to all
Don't be rude to her, please.
put our heads together and figure out what we each individually can do to help prevent the problem getting any worse. But I think the containment system that the board has put in place, I applaud the efforts that have gone on here, and especially knowing that these people are all volunteers and they're just citizens, just like you and I. If you want to sit on that board, you can do it, but you're going to have to make decisions.
Have mine.
They're not.
You have my job. Here.
I believe that you people are trying to do the best you can for our community to make it vibrant and have people improve the property that they buy this property and it's run down. They want to fix it up. Yay, that's good for all of us. So, thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
Now, I want to point out, it's 9:25, so we've been here closing on 3 hours. We do have additional work to do here, and we are having a continuation of this public hearing on
October 1st.
October 1st. And so, in the interest of not repeating much, I will have one more up till now, first speaker, and then we will close down until we'll close this public session anyway until 1st of October. And you've been sitting there in the front the whole time and not said anything.
I'm Russell Neal. I'm not in a butter. I live on Evergreen Valley Road. So I'm pretty far away, but I am a concerned citizen. And I've just kind of following up on what Ryan was talking about. I would just ask that whatever your decision is, that it be solidly based in the rules and regulations and laws of the state of New Hampshire, so that we don't open up the town to some useless litigation of which we will lose. That's all I got to say.
Hey Ed, I have a question. Next time we hold a meeting with this capacity, can we hold that'll hold the amount of people that are in this room? Because I believe you're beyond capacity.
We didn't start at this level. We had sort of some
More than half.
we had some
Gymnasium at the high school.
I think downstairs is oh yeah, we had way more than this downstairs on a couple of occasions.
The landfill one.
All right.
I remember that.
So, I'm sorry, I should have done that.
No need to drag it
Oh.
anymore.
No, go ahead.
At the
All right,
chance
so,
of,
this public, we did. We did that.
As long as you make that clear to everybody.
I think I made it clear 3 times, I hope. It is clear that we moved to continue the public hearing, is that, do I get
October
good north
1st.
south on that? All right. Because it is in the minutes, but
Can those of us who wanted to speak get first next time?
I will put that on my priority list.
Yes, Virginia, there is a first speaker.
I'm listening to all age. I'm taking it all. Are you basically trying to tell us that there's no way we can stop this? I've listened and I've...
This is plan. Okay, not the plan that everybody else out here is talking about.
I've been there.
Okay, we have no capability or capacity to talk about some plan that people, I mean, that's like conspiracy theory.
I know, but my bottom line is there no, are we just talking for nothing?
The way this plan is set up, my guess would be if we turned it down, we would be sued because,
So basically we were up a creek without a paddle.
no, there's nothing wrong with this plan.
Zoning,
We are not adjourned, by the way.
I know.
Okay.
How did the school board
That's coming up to start it up again.
I've been on the planning board.
I walked in, they said, Brian's not here tonight, you're it. Okay, I grabbed the thing.
something else for your 17th meeting?
Yeah,
Can we
I-
bring the meeting back together?
Yeah, yeah,
That's what people do. They love to.
When we have 5 minutes.
All right, we're gonna take a 5-minute recess so we can get, because I need a, Dana,
But yet,
I also need, I got some business that I gotta
that
do too.
lighting system, not knowing
Dana, I
where
got
any
your
of
phone
those
number. Now buried here somewhere, so let me...
Other business.
Here we go.
Other business.
Other business. Oh, Ashley just took off. Not you.
She had to go to the elevator.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so I don't know if she's got other business or not.
Why don't we jump to town planner comments? Oh, well, we probably should
Does the
wait
town
for-
planner anticipate any comments?
Yes.
Okay, then no, we can't. We have to go in order.
Why do we have to- why do we have to go in
The
order?
chair
We're
has the
looking-
authority to change the order.
Well, she has to be here.
Well, yeah, there's that.
Oh, the brains
That's
are
the
out there.
big miss,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and the recording,
I get the-
Oh,
the minutes.
I'm gonna leave the scotch after this.
It's okay, Rochester's moving.
Bruce, have you this document we're talking about?
When you were a child, we were part of Rochester.
do you
Say what?
I think you need to throw something at him.
you remember during the Spanish-American War, right?
Remember, it was about third grade, and we had to change the pledge. That we no longer pledge allegiance to the town of
We
Rochester.
talked about what could happen.
Yeah.
And
Or you were a grade ahead of me, I
some
think.
indicators that are there.
Yeah.
They are.
You know.
Or wasn't it a step ahead of me? I
Milton used
forget
to be
which.
part of Rochester.
It was, and you know, during the Spanish-American War,
No, it would be
up
more-
here in these areas, like by my house,
Very careful.
they had
Well,
prisoners of war. They were housing down at shipyard up here in work camps, and they all died of a plague.
Huh. Well, that saved on food. That,
All right, we are reconvened.
Yep.
Boom. Do we have any other business? Ashley? No other business. Okay, town planner comments.
All right, town planner comments. Now, you received all of the letters that were written and prepared for this meeting, and they were read to you, but I'm, as your planner, I'm suggesting you go into a very quiet room where you can concentrate and reread all of those letters. I'm not going to try and tell you what I think about them or what I want you to think. I'm just asking you to reread the letters and then make the connection to cause and effect, and whether or not what's being said may happen, that there may be indicators that it could happen in the future. You can pin this on this accessory use revision to an approved site plan. Secondly, there was some talk tonight about Milton's master plan. Milton's master plan does not consist only of the natural resources chapter. I think folks forget that there are several other chapters in the master plan, one of which is entitled Economic Development and Land Use. And I've said this before to you, is that I would ask you to go back and take a look at both the chapters that they refer to in their comments and other chapters, such as 2.4 Economic Development and Land Use, and in your own mind, frame a balance. It's not just one thing or the other. It never is. I'm saying that a master plan, because it has different chapters, really should evoke a balance in your head. A balance about development and a balance about leaving the town completely pristine. There's a balance. So it's something to consider. That's all I'm saying.
All right. Minutes from August 20th.
Make a motion to approve the minutes,
I'll
August
second.
20th.
That was quick.
As written.
As written. All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
None.
No discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, did those two say that they wanted to be on the next planning board agenda?
yes. That, is he still here?
Well, I don't see it.
He
All right,
is not
we told
planning
Peg
on
to come back
introducing,
for the next meeting.
and he is not planning on introducing the 3 projects that Peg talked about.
So we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know if they needed to be placed on the agenda, that's all.
Well, he maintained that he didn't know.
I maintain 2:30 is coming early.
Not quite 2:30, but.
No, those were.
Where was I? Comments?
No comments.
Larry, you have not discussion.
Don't wait till.
As I had stepped away from my desk for humanitarian purposes, I talked to Doug in the hall, and I really and personally believe that in spite of considerable contact from the town planner, that they are still trying to figure out what it is they have to do to not get clobbered by bringing all their big guns for spending into this year. And a discussion with the superintendent being available, with Bob Adams, would be, who is their equivalent DPW director, would be useful on the 17th. And it could be, what do they call it, that teachable moment?
I mean, just, if they go in with the mentality and they don't change it, they're gonna get clobbered. They're gonna get nothing. They really aren't. I mean, we already how many years we figured out that there's a cutoff and you're gonna add to it, they're just gonna get annihilated at the polls.
All right.
Yeah, there's those of us that think the school gets too much money.
So, any further discussion on the adjournment motion?
Motion carries.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we're adjourned until sometime later this month. 17th, is that what it is? Okay.